Good afternoon to the citizens of St. Bernard Parish. Today is July 10th, Friday. Another week has gone by in this COVID-19 saga here in St. Bernard Parish. We're going to start out with our prayer. We're going to pray for those who have died and for the families who are affected. And we're going to pray for our community. Now that we are going through another phase of this COVID-19, there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of people reporting different things throughout the community. And, we need to find a place in prayer that gets us through some of these anxieties. Thank you. We're going to start out with the numbers like we always do for the COVID-19 here in St. Bernard Parish. Things are going relatively well here in St. Bernard Parish when you compare to the state of Louisiana. And if you go on the website, the LDH website, you will see the southernmost, easternmost part of the state, which is St. Bernard Parish, is a lighter color than around us. Orleans, Jefferson, Lafourche, going to Lake Charles. And by the way, Lake Charles is leading the nation in per capita positive cases here in Louisiana. So there is a concern for the whole state. So even though we're doing good here in St. Bernard Parish, relatively with the other parishes here in Louisiana, we need to be mindful that our neighbors and our friends aren't doing as well. And we need to be respectful of whatever decisions are made by our governor going forward. To talk about that just a little bit, the governor has decided to stand pat here at phase 2 and not move forward, which I thought was a great decision. He did not make masks mandatory throughout the state as you go out into the public, but it is highly recommended. The risks go way, way down when you and the person you are with, if you cannot socially distance, are wearing masks. So if you cannot socially distance in an environment, whether it's outdoors or indoors, please wear a mask and be respectful of others. Remember, we all have personal responsibility here to make sure that we don't get the virus and pass it along to our friends. And we'll talk more about that as we go here in this update today. So our numbers, and we talked about this a little bit last week, we were averaging around 13 in March and April. And in May and June, we were averaging about 2.5 cases a day. So we've been monitoring our cases here in St. Bernard Parish for the month of July. So 9 days in, we don't have our numbers yet today on the 10th. We're doing this broadcast a little early. We're averaging around 6.7 cases a day, new cases a day. We have not had a day yet in July where we had 13. Actually, you have to go all the way back to April before, beginning of May, I should say, before you see that. So we are holding down this virus. We're seeing more and more numbers. I think today we're probably going to see more than 10, which was yesterday's number. We had 12 on July 3rd, and all the other ones were below 10. But I do suspect, especially having the July 4th, getting a little further away from July 4th, we're going to see some more numbers. Let me talk about these numbers a little bit. Most of these people that we see who are testing positive for COVID are not sick or are asymptomatic. They're not requiring hospitalization. And for the most part, they don't even know they have it. And I'm going to give you an example. In one of these days, we had 7 members of a family that were on one list at one address. So I took it upon myself to go do some contact tracing, and I went and talked to the family. Of course, being socially distanced, wearing a mask, and following all of the protocols. I talked to a member of the family, and none of them realized they had it. None of them had symptoms. But when one of them came into contact with someone, they decided to get tested. One of them tested positive. Then they all went and got tested. They tested positive. So it just goes to show you what is happening on that extreme part of this COVID. And then on the other extreme, our last death here in St. Bernard Parish was a 45-year-old male. Lives right in the middle of Chalmette. No symptoms, no underlying conditions that we know of yet. So that's part of that half of 1%, right? So while we converse and get our lives back from where we were in April, and we get out into the public more, the risk is way, way down. And they're treating this disease more now. There's more therapeutics. There are a lot of different ways they're treating this. So we all feel good. We all feel like this is over and we can get out into the public. Well, unless your family member falls into that 1% or half of 1%, then you're not going to feel so good about yourself. You're not going to feel so good about your community. So when the governor and your parish president and the task force, the vice president, President Pence, says that we should be wearing masks when you cannot socially distance. You should be socially distanced 6 feet apart from one another. You should constantly wash your hands with soap as many times during the day as you can. And if you don't have to be out in public, outdoors or indoors, don't do it. Don't go to parties that have more than 20 people or so where you cannot socially distance. Don't hang out in bar rooms where you're not practicing social distancing. When we tell you that, it's to protect you and your family against that 1/2 of 1%, right? Those people are dying. They're no longer here today. So we have to be mindful of that. And when I say that, and I tell my children this all the time, you are responsible for yourself. If you walk into a business and you see that none of the employees and none of the patrons, and there are too many patrons in there, don't go in and don't patronize that business. You alone can stay 6 feet away from people when you go out into public. You decide that. You decide whether or not you're going to wear a mask. You decide whether or not you're going to wash your hands all day long. You ultimately decide whether or not you're going to get this COVID-19. We have to get out into this community, and we say this all the time. You have to figure that every single person that you come into contact with has COVID-19. And if we all thought that way for ourselves, let's say we're selfish, and we do it for ourselves, then we would be in a better place, and we can get to the point where we could get the therapeutics and the vaccines that the COVID-19 task force in Washington, D.C. is working so hard to deliver to the citizens of this country. So we're going to get up here and talk about how good our hospital is doing. We're still COVID-free at our hospital. You know, we're back to business and doing all of our procedures and in the medical field here in St. Bernard Parish and in our region. We see New Orleans is tightening up on their restrictions a little bit because of what's happening there. Some of their hospitals are reaching capacity. We can say this and come on here all the time. We're feeling a little bit too comfortable in our community as a whole, in the state of Louisiana, and we're seeing these numbers go up. They were going to go up anyway. We get that. We flattened the curve, right? But from the standpoint that I am in and talking to the community, we need to make sure we send out the most conservative advice, because we don't want to see one death. We don't want to see one hospitalization, right? And we understand that there's a very, very low risk out there. 99% of us, right, come out of it okay. A large percentage of that, we don't even know we have it. I could be sitting here today and I've had it already, right? So all sectors of our community are dealing with this. Our government is no different. We've been very fortunate here. Our employees have been adhering to all of the guidelines. We had a council member, as you know, or probably have heard already, come down and tested positive for COVID-19. Tested back on June 28th. Today is July 10th, right? So we got to follow all of those protocols here in parish government, and we're going to do that. But when it hits home, close by you, you start thinking about some of the things you're doing, and you wear masks more often. You make sure that you stay away from people. And it's pretty simple. Think about it. We're saying the same things. Stay 6 feet away from people, wear a mask when you can't stand 6 feet away from people, and don't hang out in large numbers at parties and establishments and so forth, right? Our younger generation, we're finding in this phase, are the top vote getters, if you will, of getting this COVID-19. My children are in that age group. And in St. Bernard Parish, it's a little different than some of the other parishes. Our average age in St. Bernard Parish is 30-something, right? So when that age group starts testing positive for COVID-19, that is a little bit more serious from my standpoint for St. Bernard, because we have more of people of that age. And those people, what do? They're living with children every day. They have more children than anyone. And they're contacting with their parents. I'm a parent, right? So I try to stay away from as many of the functions that they have with their friends. But I could tell you, after last week, almost every group that I've talked to, like I said, I know a lot of people because of my children in that age group, they have a little different mindset going into this week, into this weekend, because some of their friends have come down with COVID-19. So it's hitting home. So now they're starting to think a little bit, which is a great thing here in our community. But I could tell you, here in our community, we are doing very good, and we want to continue to do that. Our employees and all of our government agencies, our first responders, our sheriff's department, we're out there every single day making sure that we do the very best that we can. And if we go out there and do the very best that we can, it's still not enough when you're dealing with such a horrible disease that's not going to go away, that there's no cure at the moment, right? There's no vaccine. There's no therapeutic where you could just go home and sit home for 3 days, take some medicine, you won't be infectious. So there's a lot we don't know, but there's a lot that we do know, and we hope that we can get to next year sometime when we come with that vaccine and we can all feel safe. So that is our COVID-19 update today. I hope you got the message. And I should, I'm not going to say it again because we've said it so many times, but I do want to thank all of our employees. I want to thank the community for the July 4th celebration that we had here in St. Bernard Parish. It was absolutely unbelievable. The fireworks show, it was the biggest and best we've ever done. People showed up in their cars. We had the radio, 94.7. The music was with our fireworks here in St. Bernard Parish. A lot of people stayed in their cars. Some families got out of their cars, stayed right there with their seats, with their chairs, I should say. So it was a great thing. It was a great moment for us this year more than ever, that we celebrate the freedoms and the liberties that we have in this country. And remember, if you're living in this country, you're living in the best place on earth. And we all need to understand that. With everything that's going on in our country today, that is dividing us, we need to think about that. And if you think you're in a bad place, go to another country. Spend about a week. No, spend a month and come back here and tell me that you're in a bad place here in the United States of America. So I wanted to thank everyone for that. It was a great evening, and many people came out and enjoyed it and were socially distancing. The Census 2020, we're still in 11th place. We never cracked the top 10 yet. Everybody went up a little bit with their percentages, which should happen. We want the citizens of St. Bernard Parish to get online or make a phone call or fill out that paperwork for your Census 2020. Remember, every person who submits their residency in the census is more dollars for St. Bernard Parish. It's more quality of life dollars that we can spend in our community going forward. So we're asking you guys to let's get up in the top 10 here before next week. And if you've done yours already, talk to someone in your family. Ask them to go online. Show them how to go online. It takes 5 minutes. Doesn't take anything. So we would appreciate your cooperation to make that happen. COVID-19 testing. We will have testing at Tractor Supply in Miro from 8 to 11 tomorrow morning. After the testing tomorrow, we will have met our quota here in St. Bernard Parish. So I'm not sure what's going to happen after that, but they will test around 100 people there tomorrow. So go there and get tested if you're feeling some symptoms or if you came into contact with someone. I do want to mention if you're younger than 18, they're not going to test you. I've gotten a few phone calls on that. If there are some symptoms, you need to go to your doctor or to the hospital. And if your symptoms warrant it, they will give you the test. What else we want to talk about here? Today, when I leave here, I'm going to a meeting, a lunch meeting with Congressman Scalise. He's meeting with some local leaders to talk about the CARES Act and some of the reimbursements that we can expect and some of the problems that we want to bring to his attention or giving some updates on some items of concern for us. The Mr. Go opening here in St. Bernard Parish, we will be discussing that today, along with Mardi Gras Pass, along with our drainage issues we have here in St. Bernard Parish. And our pumping systems, we want to let him know that we're going to be having an election here on August 15th to take control over our drainage here in St. Bernard Parish as it pertains to all of our canals, our large canals, and our pumping stations. So that's very important for us, and we're going to be talking to him about that. And one of the main things we're going to be talking to Congressman Scalise today about is our post office here in Chalmette. Our postmaster here in Chalmette, we have zero confidence in. Besides a lot of the problems we're having with mail, they don't cut the grass. It's that simple. The grass gets up to 3 and 4 feet. So we're starting to find them every day here at St. Bernard Parish government. I think the only help that we can get at that Chalmette post office is to change the leadership there. So we're going to be asking Congressman Scalise to dig into that and to please try to help us out with our post office. We're having major, major problems. We're finding out today that we have some citizens getting certified mail that's 2 years old. And I'm not kidding. That is actually happening, right? So we're asking for some relief in dealing with that. It is a federal agency, and we're trying to cover our bases there with our discussions today with Congressman Scalise. And we want to thank him for coming to St. Bernard Parish. Mosquito control is ramping up here in St. Bernard Parish. We're getting some calls there. Today is Friday, so let's see. Wednesday night, the plane flew over Lower St. Bernard, so we should be seeing some relief there. But just to let you know, we're on top of that. We're in constant contact with mosquito control and making sure that we cover all of those areas. We've already talked about the July 4th celebration. We're going into the weekend here, so I want to wish everyone a happy weekend here starting on July 10th. Be safe, socially distance, and remember to respect others, and have a great weekend. God bless each and every one of you.